Welcome to Boiler Ball post game in the lounge. Purdue getting a big win over Iowa, 78-57. I'm Grant Flora here with Dustin Schutte. An absolutely strong, solid performance from Purdue to go into Iowa City and get a nice 21-point win. I feel like this was another one of those games that was a little bit worrisome just because it was on the road and Iowa's a solid team, but yeah, a lot of fun to watch, a lot of fun to see, and just like see Purdue play a 40-minute stretch where they just were clearly the dominant team. So, yeah, a lot of fun. What were the initial thoughts on the first watch?
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out was, this was a game where Purdue's had trouble maintaining leads, and they were able to do that for a full 40 minutes. I think there were a few times when Iowa in that second half maybe got it down to 9 or 10. But every time that they, got back within striking distance, it felt like Purdue had a response. And that's what you want to see from a team that everybody thought could, be a Final Four caliber team, a national championship caliber team. And then, really the story, especially in the first half, was Jakari Harris. CJ Cox picks up 2 early fouls. I don't even think we were 2 minutes into the game. And he comes in and hits 4 of his first 5 shots, throws down that monster dunk with an and one, makes the free throw. And that play seemed to really spark Purdue. And so for him to come in that situation, get 12 points, and I think at the time he was 4 or 5 from the floor, and then, didn't get as many shots the rest of the game, but just giving what the defense gave him, and then taking what the defense gave him, and then I thought he was I was keeping my eye on him on the defensive end. He was all over the floor making plays, doing a really good job there against Iowa. So those to me were the 2 things. I'm sure we can get into some other things that stood out, but those were the 2 things to me that, when Purdue faced a little bit of adversity there early in the game, couple minutes with CJ Cox picking up 2 fouls, Jakari stepped in and gave him a spark. And then this was, as dominant a performance as we've seen from start to finish from Purdue all season, maybe outside of the Texas Tech game.
Yeah, I mean, talking about Jakari, for one thing, I think we need to see a lot more of that athleticism and aggression, like what we saw in that dunk, because he's got the athleticism for it, and it's something that Purdue kind of lacks in their backcourt a little bit. And I think he can give them that element, and so it was great to see that. Defensively, he had 3 steals, and I think they were all jumping in passing lanes and just taking away some passes. Now, I think you can credit part of that to some lackadaisical passing from Iowa. They weren't the greatest passes, but Jakari was there to take advantage. And yeah, he just played a great floor game, sparked them in a pretty big way, like you were talking about. So I think this is a key moment where if he can build on that momentum and keep giving this type of production, even if it's not 14 points all the time, it's just being able to make the most of his minutes, that can give Purdue quite a bit. Also 5 rebounds, and we can talk about Purdue's dominance on the boards again. But then CJ Cox came in and kind of did the same thing in the second half. 14 points, yeah. Not quite the stats outside of that, only 2 rebounds and 1 steal, but still he guarded Bennett Sturtz and did a nice job defensively, and had that early stretch in the second half where he just kind of made the move where Purdue, yeah, they were up by 11 at halftime and looked good, but Iowa could have clawed back into it. He was the one that stretched it out and kind of made it a much smooth sailing second half performance for Purdue.
Yeah, he hit 4 triples of 4 or 5 in a stretch there, and I think you're right. I think that was what pushed the lead out to 20. 2 of them, then Iowa has to take a timeout early in the first half, or excuse me, early in the second half. So yeah, for him to play, I think he played 6 minutes maybe in the first half. I have the stats up, and just my utter refusal to look at the stats when we're talking about this stuff. He played, why is it not telling? There it is. Yeah, 6 minutes. So I didn't have to look it up. He played 6 minutes in the first half, and then to come off into the second half and just bury a couple shots right out of the gate, that was really impressive. And that's the kind of thing that Purdue needs. You're not going to get that type of shot making in every single game, but to have guys who can come off the bench who, whether they were in foul trouble in the first half or whether they didn't get many minutes in one half or the other, they got to be able to come in and be productive. And CJ did that in the second half, just like Jakari did in the first half. So I was really impressed with that. But I thought this entire team, they're coming off a game where they shot 46 3-pointers against Nebraska, only made 28%. And But I thought this team shot the ball confidently. Like everybody was confident in their shots. Like obviously, again, Jakari got it going, but Jack hit one. Fletcher hit a couple big ones at key moments in the game. The only guy who really struggled from the floor was Braden, and he only shot the ball 5 times. So he was getting everybody else in it. He had finished the game with 12 assists, but going through, you had Omer had 2 threes. Fletcher had 2, CJ had 4, Jakari had 4, Jack had 1, and Oscar had 1 that was then wiped off the board. But he still, we can count it in our hearts. The big man got a 3. But I just thought that everybody was shooting the ball confidently, whether it was make or miss. They just felt it just seemed like at times Purdue over the past 2 years, you can see maybe some of the hesitancy to pull it down and try to look for a better shot. It seems like these past 2 games have been like, no, this is the best look we're going to get. We're going to fire it up because the way we've been rebounding, it's going to give us a shot to get the ball and maybe get some second chance points.
Yeah, I mean, that was they shot 40%, 12 of 30 from 3, which is obviously not bad. They'll take a 40% most nights, I think, especially on the road. And so I think when you shoot more confidently, like naturally, you're going to see better percentages. And so that's a pretty big deal, especially for one of the better shooting teams in the country. But yeah, Cox and Harris led the team in scoring, 14 points apiece. Your big 3 were not the ones dominating the scoring like they sometimes do. But Trakoff and Wren had a 12-point, 12 rebound double-double. So another great performance from him coming off the 19 rebound game against Nebraska. So he's been a big deal. And then you also had Braden Smith as the second leading rebounder with 7. So if he had more points, this would have been another close to triple-double type watch for him. He still wouldn't have had the rebounds, but obviously he was doing a lot outside of scoring. But Purdue dominates the rebounding game overall, 38-30. I almost felt like more to me. I don't know if that's like if you felt the same thing, but like almost felt like more.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The way Iowa plays, though, it creates such few opportunities. Like Purdue didn't have the chance to get as many offensive rebounds because they were simply hitting shots. They shot 47% from the floor, and a lot of those I think were misses late in the game. And then they shot 40% from behind the 3-point line. So they didn't have as many opportunities to offensive rebound. But it did in the way Iowa plays, they limit their shot selection. So I thought that Purdue did a great job on the glass. Once again, Trey Kaufman-Wren had 11 in the first half and just 1 in the second half. The thing I thought was, because there was one point when I thought, I don't know at what media timeout it was, but I looked at the stats and I thought Purdue's got to be winning this on the glass like 15-5 or something. And it was 11-8. Like it wasn't, Purdue was winning it, but it wasn't that sizable. So I think there's something to what you're saying. It felt like more. It never felt like Iowa was, I think they got a few offensive rebounds throughout the game that maybe you'd like to see Purdue clean up. They certainly fought for some. I think maybe the difference is there were a few mixed in there that I thought Purdue had, and then Iowa came in and kind of ripped them away. But overall, again, 2 back-to-back really good rebounding performances from Purdue, and that's when this team is at their best, is when they're rebounding the basketball hard. Obviously, Trey set the tone again. Oscar wasn't quite as effective as he was previously, but they had Braden swoop in and pick up 7 rebounds, and Shikari got him 5, and Daniel Jacobson, who I thought just 6 points, 4 rebounds, but I thought he was fantastic today. And so we can probably talk about him in a little bit, but yeah, rebounding, again, a big strength. And when you're able to do that and own the glass, that's what you have to do, especially on the road, to win in these type of environments.
Yeah. So, they did those things. Fletcher Loyer puts up 12 more points. Just a solid performance from him. We're seeing just consistent good production from Fletcher coming off, the month-long spell that he kind of had that people have talked about quite a bit in the last week. So, but let's talk about that bench. Like, not just Jakari Harris, Daniel Jacobson, but all of them combined for 31 bench points. And it looks like they combined for 10 rebounds, looks like. So, some solid rebounding as well from the bench. But, yeah, 31 points. That's an average of about 7.5 per bench player, because you only had 4 bench players play. Benter hit the 3, had 5 points. Jacobson, Meyer both had 6, and Jakari with 14. And I feel like we've seen that a few different times in these last 4 or 5 games. It's the bench just coming in a big way for Purdue, and it helps them get started. It helps them finish out the games. just has really been a nice element.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jakari was the star, especially in that first half, but we've talked enough about him. I thought Omer played well. The one thing that kind of, if I want to get nitpicky about his game, I think at times he just dribbles too much. Like it seems like he tries to create too much and tries to go one-on-one or doesn't move the ball. And I don't know if that's Purdue not running the offense. I don't know if that's him just trying to take over because he thinks he has a better matchup. I'm not sure what that is. But I thought he played pretty much in control. He had that really nice pass to Jacobson that results. I don't remember if it was an and one or just a dunk or what it was, but he had a great feed to Jacobson. Benter, not a high usage game because Trey was playing so well and crashing the glass. So he only gets 10 minutes, but was fairly productive during his time on the floor. He's another one who hit a three. But Daniel, I thought 20 minutes, 6 points, 4 rebounds. I don't think you're going to look at that and really gawk at that stat line because it doesn't pop out to you. But I thought he was aggressive and was physical. At times, kind of like Omer dribbling, I think Daniel sometimes gets the ball. If he doesn't get the perfect pass, he tends to dribble it and try to help. I wish he would not put it on the floor because he's not the best dribbler, and that allows opponents to kind of come in there and swipe. And I thought that happened once or twice today. I think one time he got fouled and one time there resulted in a turnover. So he got away with it once. But what I did like was Daniel was altering shots. And I felt like at times in that game, Iowa would get to the rim and they'd short arm or they'd quick shot because they expected Daniel to be there. So there were times when Daniel wasn't even on the floor and it felt like they were still feeling his presence. So just the fact that you can use that 7'4" length to alter shots, I don't know. I know Oscar had a few blocks and Purdue as a team had 4, but I didn't see if Daniel got credited with any. I'm looking right now. He had 3 blocks. Yeah. I don't know how I missed all 3 of those. But I think that was a major factor in the game. And Iowa, again, couldn't get anything rolling offensively. Even when they got to the basket, they seemed to be a little bit timid. So again, I thought Jakari played well. I thought Omer played within himself. But if you're going to give like a second MVP off the bench, I thought Daniel was really good in his minutes today.
Yeah, I mean, he had the 3 blocks. I think you're right in the fact that he altered a lot. You remember that there was that little, Iowa passed the ball, made a good offensive play. I think Combs got it just right in the middle of the paint, put up a short little floater, and it was just off. And I think Jacobson was, if I'm not mistaken, Jacobson was in the game for that play. Even if he wasn't, like Purdue was protecting the rim well. And just the presence of those guys around there might have just affected that either mentally or just trying to alter to make sure it doesn't get blocked. One of those things. So obviously Combs should have made that shot, but still having guys affecting shots and protecting the rim is helpful in that regard. So I thought the same thing. Even back to your comments on Omer, like I think I agree. I think sometimes you'll see him, there's like 7 or 8 seconds in the shot clock, and you're like, all right, it's winding down, but like there's still a couple passes here that can be made, and you get a good look. And he will take it and just kind of dribble around, make some sort of move and put up a shot when there's still a little bit of time left. Like, that's just an example I can think of. Like, okay, we really should try and move the ball a little more. But Omer kind of just takes it. And sure, he's talented. And, like, I'm sure in, like, the positions he's been in the past, like, that's a play he'll make because he's one of the best guys on the floor and he believes in his ability to create his own shot. But I think within the Purdue offense, you're right. He needs to probably look for some other opportunities by just moving the basketball.
Yeah. I was just going to make, like, I don't even think it's weird because I don't even necessarily think that when he takes them, he gets separation, but he's just, to me, and this is, I know this goes back to like Matt Painter saying, we want guys to shoot good shots. And I think that he's getting decent looks at it. It's just, maybe it's because they're not, like, if he hits that shot more often than not, maybe it's not a complaint, but it does feel like if they have 7 or 8 seconds in the shot clock and Omer's got the ball, he's going to dribble and wind it down and then take a shot. And sometimes it's contested. Sometimes he's able to get space, but it seems more than not, maybe if he would just set his feet and take a jump shot. I think a lot of times too, he fades away when he shoots those. Maybe that's the issue. I don't know. But there have been times when, to me, it's just like, you got to move the ball in this situation. You're just dribbling too much. And, but again, I thought he played well. That's just me being a little bit nitpicky in this situation.
Yeah, that's fair. Purdue shoots 16 of 20 from the free throw line, 80%. They did have, I think, one missed front end of a 1-on-1, but I think it was only once. Obviously, a huge difference compared to what we saw against Nebraska, where they were like maybe 50% and missed some really clutch moment free throws, front ends of 1-on-1s, free throws that would have put the game away. So that's another huge area I think that you've got to look at. Just another one of those ways where we saw Purdue a little bit more locked in for the full 40 minutes in this game. Because, when Sam and I recorded the podcast kind of talking about the Nebraska game, one thing we said was like, yeah, it's one thing to give up a massive lead. It's another thing then to stretch it back out to like 14 with 2:40 some to go, and to give it up again because you're not making free throws and you're playing soft defense and things like that.
Yeah.
We saw Iowa kind of get some momentum there later in the second half. It never really seemed like it would be enough to actually get back in the game, but like they were fighting. They didn't completely quit. And yet Purdue was just so poised to make their free throws, get good looks offensively, and play good enough defense to not let Iowa do anything too crazy. So I think that stat line, as well as kind of that narrative, was a huge part of what helped Purdue in the second half to just kind of keep Iowa completely out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking through the second half, and there was never, like, I think it got to, was it 17?
Yeah,
and I think that was I think that was the closest it got in the second half. Like Purdue, they let the clamps down, and part of that is Bennett Sturtz finished with 19, but that was a little bit of fool's gold. He didn't score a field goal until like the 3-minute mark, 4-minute mark of the first half. Like his bucket came late in the first half. And then I thought a lot of those other shots didn't come until, like, at one point he had, in midway through the second half, he had 9 points and 4 fouls. Purdue could not have played him any better. And, I was because to me, the shots were falling, but I just thought, like, to me, this was the best defensive effort Purdue has had all season. You consider the opponent, you consider how good they are offensively, how meticulous they are, how they, squeeze everything out of every single possession. And the fact that they just could not get going. Sturtz had 19. He was the only one in double figures. They shot below, and I had it up and then I was messing around with it. And what was their final percentage? They shot below 30 from three. I know that.
37% from the field, 27 from three.
Yeah, this is a good shooting team. Like, they're very comparable to Purdue on the offensive end, maybe not in terms of tempo, but in terms of just their shooting percentage and efficiency. And Purdue shut them down. And by the way, like, it wasn't like they just missed open shots. They had a few open shots that we talked about, some of those at the rim that they should have made. But what does that account for? I mean, 8 to 10 points maybe? And you still win by double figures.
Yeah, and that Iowa offense flows through Bennett Sturtz. And Purdue has done a great job. I think they did this even in the game at Mackey, at least for the first portion of the game, like just putting a lot of emphasis on him and kind of forcing him to make other guys make plays. And in Mackey, they did, like Combs and Banks, like they were hitting shots like crazy, but that wasn't the case today. And, Bennett Sturtz had 19 points, but you heard throughout the broadcast, like, that he just wasn't taking many shots. And it was like for Iowa, he needs to be high volume, being confident with his good looks. Like, there were shots he should have taken and he didn't. But I think a lot of that had to do with Purdue's defense and the understanding that this offense flows through this guy, and he doesn't have the same options that Braden Smith has for Purdue. Like, Braden will kill you because he can pass the ball well, and the guys he passes to are going to score. I think the options for Iowa are just a little less consistent, and they just weren't quite there today.
Well, and the thing was, like, after that game, Banks and Combs were combined 7 of 8, I think, from 3 in that game. And Painter basically said, he's like, you live with, like, those guys shoot, either they're not high percentage shooters or they're not high volume shooters, or a combination of both. And so you just live with that. If they go 7 of 8, then God bless them, right? And so that's what happened in that first game. So you see what happens when those guys who don't typically make threes don't make threes and aren't impact players. Now, I know a little bit of this is going to be skewed because Tavion Banks was playing a little bit injured, so he wasn't at full strength, and that certainly hinders Iowa's offense. He's their second leading scorer. But I still thought, like, Purdue's rotations on the defensive end were good. They were making good decisions on the offensive end. Like if Tavion's at full strength, I don't know that the outcome changes that much of this game. It was just, that's how well Purdue played. And I think you mentioned this earlier, like this is exactly what you needed heading into a stretch where you play probably number 1 Michigan, your rival Indiana, and then a top 15, top 20 Michigan State team in the next 3 games at Mackey Arena. A chance to, you can't win the Big Ten by winning it. You're going to have to get some help from somewhere else down the road. You need Michigan to lose at least one more. But this big stretch, the win over Nebraska, this win over Iowa should give you a lot of confidence heading into this really crucial 3-game stretch where you're still fighting for a number 1 seed, by the way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mentioned this in our episode on Friday, but for the Purdue media team put out that Nebraska movie about basically the Nebraska game. They showed a bunch of film and clips and stuff from behind the scenes. And at the very end of that, when they're kind of breaking it down in the locker room after the win, you can hear, I think it's Fletch, but somebody, as they break that huddle, just says, hey, 7 more. And it's like these guys still have their eyes on a Big Ten championship, on really winning out, which sets them up well for the tournament. Like the expectations and the goals have not dropped just because they lost 3 games in a row and they're sitting further down in the standings. Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn, Fletcher Loyer, they did not come back to settle for 3rd in the Big Ten in a Sweet 16 trip. Like they came back to win championships, and a 3-game stretch and tough stretch of playing is not going to deter that. So I think you saw that today with the win at Nebraska, and you're going to see it now as they go back home and get to play some tough competition. So yeah, all that was just really, really important, really good to see, and it's exciting going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think Purdue right now is in the last 2, and we can talk all about the 22-point lead that you couldn't hang on to. But the important thing is you won a road game against the top 10 team in the Big Ten. You found a way to win, and then you come out and you just clobber Iowa from the opening jump. Don't let them breathe. And now you carry a ton of momentum now into this next, the final 6 games of your season, and a chance to really, basically solidify yourself as that 2 seed, and again, maybe challenge for a 1 spot. You're going to, again, need some help from I think Arizona and Michigan are probably locked into a 1 seed at this point, but you're probably going to need some help from Duke and UConn. If UConn loses another game or 2, they're in the Big East. The Big Ten is way better than the Big East, obviously. So, yeah, it's going to be a really fun when this team. I tweeted this out and people seem to like it. It was like, this was the Purdue team that we see that can win a national championship, that can make a Final Four run, and this is the team that needs to be playing at its peak when March rolls around. And you saw how good they can be. When the shots weren't falling against Nebraska, it was the rebounding that saved them. And today it was a little bit of everything. Shots were falling, rebounding. They were playing really good on the defensive end. It's going to take a lot against Michigan. That's now going to be a crazy environment at Mackey Arena. So a lot to be excited about. Pretty good week on the road. And now it's time for Purdue to take care of business on its home court these next 3 games.
Yeah, that Michigan game obviously as big as it gets, with Michigan probably being number 1 and with the stakes of that. But I think it'll tell a lot about where this Purdue team is at, because as good as Iowa is at times, they're also a lot better teams than Iowa. And so
the one thing sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. The one thing I'll say about the Iowa is the way they play offense, it lends itself to, if they dig themselves into a hole, they can't really climb out. Nebraska, because of how they shoot the 3, Michigan, because of their athletes, their rebounding, if they get don't think Purdue's, seen a situation where if they get a big lead that nobody's going to make a run. It kind of worked out perfectly. Now you still wanted to see put the clamps down and not allow Iowa to get back in it, but also their style kind of prohibits them from making a run of that magnitude in the game. So you still going to have to play your top-notch basketball to beat Michigan on Tuesday. I don't think anybody's not thinking that.
Yeah, and I think that will tell a lot about where Purdue really is, because you can, like I said, you can beat an Iowa team by 20 on the road, and maybe Iowa has a rough night, kind of like they did, and things kind of go your way. It's another thing to come in and beat a Michigan team that has the athletes, has the talent, the shooting, the skill, the size, and I get it's going to be in Mackey, but like that is going to take a lot. And the matchups, there are some matchups that probably don't fare Purdue's favor. So they got to find ways to get over that. This is the type of game where it's like if they are a national championship contender and they're going to fare well in the NCAA tournament, they're going to compete well and potentially win. And that'll just be very telling. So I'm excited to see that kind of all play out. But yeah, going to be electric, like you said.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm already looking forward to it.
All right, well, that will wrap us up for Boiler Ball postgame in the lounge. Purdue 78, Iowa 57. Huge win for the Boilers as they set themselves up for what will likely be a matchup with number 1 Michigan on Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. So definitely mark that one on your calendars. But that'll wrap us up. So for Dustin Schutte and Grant Flora, we're saying so long from Boiler Ball postgame in the lounge.